Caught in a web of lies and late-night secrets, what happens when love turns into betrayal and the truth comes with a price? My daughter's innocent question revealed my wife's cheating, leading to heartbreak and divorce. My journey began in a small suburb where I grew up dreaming of success in the business world. Fascinated by technology, I always believed it could solve everyday problems. After college, I worked tirelessly to build a startup specializing in innovative surveillance equipment. The company grew, and our first major contract with the Department of Defense marked the start of many profitable ventures. As my career took off, I met Laura at a networking event. She was a charming accountant with an infectious laugh. We fell in love quickly and married within a year. Our daughter Alyssa was born 2 years later, bringing us immense joy. However, as my business demands increased, I failed to notice the growing distance between Laura and me. Reality hit hard after our divorce, when I was caring for our 3-year-old daughter. I had ignored the signs for too long. The wake-up call came at my grandfather's funeral after his sudden heart attack. The day after the funeral, I packed our bags to leave my mother's house. As I secured Alyssa in her car seat, I asked, "Would you like to take off your shoes, sweetheart?" Her adorable, predictable, "Yes, please," always made me smile. I unbuckled her tiny Mary Jane shoes and, knowing she preferred it, took off her socks. With her toes wriggling in relief, I tickled her feet. She giggled and kicked, a game we both cherished. I realized we had been spending more time together, and we both treasured these moments. It wasn't the same with Laura. Before I could dwell on it, my little angel interrupted my thoughts. "Daddy," Alyssa asked as I placed her shoes on the bench seat beside her, carefully tucking each sock inside the correct shoe. "What is it, Pumpkin?" I asked gently. When she didn't answer immediately, I looked her in the eyes. "Why doesn't Mommy love us anymore?" she asked simply. I was stunned and stared at her, momentarily speechless. "Honey, your mommy loves us both, especially you," I said slowly. "She loves you more than anything in the world." A brief sparkle appeared in her eyes, but quickly faded. "But she didn't want to come say goodbye to Grandpa," she said plaintively. I could only repeat what Laura had told me. "She had to work, honey," I said. I considered explaining about the major account Laura was handling, but it was too complex for a 3-year-old. "Mommy will be there when we get home, baby. She'll be waiting for you." "Does she have to work at night too?" Alyssa asked. I started to say no, but explaining Laura's nights out with friends would raise more questions. "No, baby girl," I said. "I think Mommy's almost done with her big project. She'll have more time for us soon." I needed to end the conversation. It was too painful. I buckled her car seat, kissed her, and closed the door. Minutes later, she was asleep in the back seat. As I drove down the interstate, Alyssa slept, but I couldn't. Her sad words replayed in my mind. If she noticed, it wasn't just me. Laura had implied as much the last time I asked why she went out so often. We arrived home at sunset. Laura was indeed home. Alyssa ran upstairs, excited to tell her mother about the cousin she met. I followed, consumed by the dark thoughts that had taken root on the drive home. Why was my wife spending so much time at work or out with her friends? I found Laura at her vanity, putting on makeup in her underwear. She gave me a peck on the cheek, and I realized I couldn't remember the last time she gave me a passionate kiss. I sat on the bed watching. Alyssa tried talking to her, but Laura barely responded. Even Alyssa noticed and eventually went to her room. Laura kept fixing her hair and makeup. "What's going on, Laura?" I asked, struggling to keep my emotions in check. My stomach was tight, and I felt a surge of blood at my neck. "What do you mean, honey?" she replied, focused on her mascara. "We've been home 10 minutes, and you're rushing out already," I said brusquely. She paused, looking at me impatiently. "Honey, you know I go out with the girls on Friday nights," she said, sounding tired of the conversation. "Actually," I replied sarcastically, "you go out on Saturdays, some Sundays, most Wednesdays, and almost every Friday. Sometimes it's like one long night out." Alyssa had gone to her room, and I closed our bedroom door. Turning back, I saw Laura standing and looking at me expressionlessly. I stepped close, taking her hands in mine. "Laura," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, "Alyssa asked me why you don't love us anymore. I have to ask the same question." Laura's eyes narrowed, a sign I'd crossed the line, but I pressed on. "Do you still love me?" I asked. She didn't answer at first, then softened and leaned against me. "Of course, darling," she said softly. "I love you more today than when we got married." Despite her words, I felt uneasy. She was happy then, but not now. "Then stay home tonight, honey," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Laura sighed, patting my chest. "We can put Alyssa to bed early," I suggested. "We'll dim the lights, open that bottle of wine, and you can wear the black lace camisole I got you for Valentine's Day." Her body seemed to agree until I mentioned the camisole. Then she stiffened and tried to back away. I held her wrists firmly. "Laura," I said, "are you cheating on me?" I watched her closely and saw a flicker in her eyes, a tightening at the corners. Her pulse raced under my fingers, confirming my suspicion. "Don't be silly," she protested. "I could never love anyone but you." She leaned into me, kissing my neck, but careful not to mess up her hair. I felt a cold chill at my back. Laura patted my arms and glanced at the clock. "I'm going to be late," she said. I promised the gals I wouldn't be. "Maybe tomorrow night." "Laura, we need us time," I replied, my annoyance rising. "Tell them you'll go another time and spend tonight with us. Please." She pulled away, heading to the closet for a short skirt. "I can't disappoint all my friends," she protested. "Why would you want me to? Why would you want to disappoint me and your daughter?" I shot back. "Don't we matter anymore?" Her eyes narrowed with anger. "I told you tomorrow," she snapped. "I'm entitled to time for myself without you smothering me. I'm not your slave." We argued more. Laura insisted she was a free, independent member of our marriage and would do whatever she needed to relax after work. I reminded her that she'd always had plenty of space, pointing out that I never protested when she went back to work after Alyssa was born. I supported her career and was proud of her achievements, even though my income was enough for us to live well without her working. But I didn't understand why her job and nights out took precedence over our family's needs. I got sarcastic about the girls, which made her angrier. She asked what I was accusing her of, and I left before saying something I'd regret. I went downstairs to cool off on the couch, wrestling with the urge to stop her from going out, but knowing I couldn't. When she came downstairs, I was calmer. We exchanged looks. She was defiant, and I was conflicted. "Laura," I said, "please don't do this." My voice was deeper than usual. She paused at the door, then opened it. "Laura," I repeated more firmly, "I love you. Please don't do this to me and Alyssa." She looked back expressionless, then stepped through the door and closed it behind her. Alyssa ran downstairs, opened the door, and watched her mother's car disappear. She closed the door, walked quickly to the couch, climbed up next to me, and stared at the door, hoping Laura would return. After a moment, she climbed into my lap and we hugged for a long time. Then I carried her to the kitchen to make sandwiches. It was a tense weekend between Laura and me. She came home early Saturday morning and spent most of the day with a severe hangover. After dealing with her bad temper, Alyssa and I went to the park and didn't return until after dinner. Laura was furious and accused us of abandoning her. "You brought this on yourself by going out and abandoning Alyssa," I said. "Get used to us spending time alone and enjoying it. Deal with it civilly or be quiet." Laura was shocked by my tone and stayed quiet, focusing on Alyssa for the rest of the evening. That night, I tried to initiate closeness, but Laura's upset stomach forced us to stop. The next night, she was completely unresponsive, and I gave up, taking a shower to calm down. On Monday, I left the house before Laura woke up, forcing her to handle Alyssa's morning routine, which she disliked. Before leaving, I activated surveillance equipment in the basement that recorded all phone conversations and intercepted cell calls within 50 feet. This wasn't strictly legal, but it was for my peace of mind. Surveillance cameras already covered almost every room in the house to monitor babysitters and the housekeeper. We trusted them but followed a trust but verify policy. I reflected that we had needed a babysitter for months and wondered if the expensive system was worth it. I pulled inside the tall chain-link fence surrounding the new campus and parked at the business office. The fence and razor wire had been added after we secured our first Department of Defense contract 3 years ago, followed by 2 more profitable deals. I parked and sat in the car, torn between my gut feeling that Laura was unfaithful and my lack of concrete proof. Seeing Phil Sanders, one of my first hires, brought me out of my thoughts. I greeted him, grabbed my Palm Pilot and briefcase, and glanced at the logo on the wall. MA Industries. That's me, Mark Archer. At 34, I was CEO and president of a small but thriving corporation. We began as a tool manufacturer 12 years ago, then found a niche making motor mounts for home security cameras. We built a reputation for quality surveillance equipment among private investigators. 8 years ago, we acquired a company that made compact color cameras with impressive optical zoom and started selling the complete package statewide and online. We then acquired several private investigation agencies, forming a division named Information and Surveillance Associates, and opened branches in 3 other cities. MA Industries was doing well, but maintained a low profile. In my office, I signed routine papers without reviewing them, a task handled by my efficient secretary/office manager, Maggie. I often teased her by calling her Radar, and she'd retort with a quip about Colonel Potter. Maggie was indispensable, and the office ran smoothly thanks to her. To keep her from retiring, I paid her as much as our vice presidents, a fact she knew but they didn't. "Maggie," I said as she brought my first mug of coffee, "could you ask Carl Winters to come see me?" "Sure," she replied, looking curious. "Can I say why?" I shook my head, but then reconsidered. Maggie had been like a second mother to me since our early days in the renovated warehouse. Just tell him I need to become a customer, I said slowly, avoiding eye contact. She paused, then softly said, I'm so sorry, Mark, and left quickly. I wondered what she had sensed. Carl headed our surveillance and private investigations division, and Maggie had understood my request without needing more details. What's up, Mark? Carl asked, closing the door as I motioned him to a chair. He sipped his tea while I struggled to start. Carl, I think Laura might be getting into something she'll regret, I said slowly, choosing my words carefully. Crap, Mark, he responded dejectedly. I'm sorry to hear that. We both took a deep breath. Carl set his mug down, staring at his fingernails. Well, he said after a pause, we have everything we need to find out. I'll bring in some temps to free up our best guys. Can you give me her work schedules, cell number, computer logins, credit card numbers, stuff like that? I nodded. Initially, I thought about objecting to using our in-house team, but I realized Carl wanted the best on the case. I pulled my briefcase closer, having spent Sunday copying Laura's account numbers and other necessary information. I had Carl set me up as a paying customer of Information and Surveillance Associates, using my personal checking account to keep the auditors satisfied. We discussed how to track my wife to see where she went, who she was with, and what they did. I felt guilty, but realized it was necessary. After the hurt from the weekend and growing alienation from Laura, I needed answers. If she wasn't damaging our marriage, she'd never know about the surveillance, and maybe we could even see a marriage counselor. But if she was unfaithful, I had to know. By noon, Carl's team had bugged Laura's Lexus at her office downtown, using my key since my name was on the title. They installed a microphone under the driver's seat, transmitting within a 1-mile radius, and a GPS tracker in the trunk. Carl assigned 7 of his best people and 5 rental vehicles to the task, ensuring they were reliable. He also hired a freelancer to start at Laura's accounting firm next week. Carl advised me to stay out of it and let his team handle everything, which made me feel worse. The fact that there were standard procedures for this made it seem even more depressing. He offered a choice, either disrupt any impending affair or gather evidence for a divorce trial. I chose to interrupt. I wanted my wife back. He asked me to keep things normal with Laura and promised to inform me at critical points. That night, I called Carl from the basement after listening to cell phone intercepts, which weren't legal but were for my own knowledge. Carl answered on the second ring. Carl, I asked, my voice thick with emotion. Oh geez, he said. What's happened? His concern was clear. I took a deep breath to steady myself. You know the cell phone and landline intercepts we installed when we built the house? I asked. Yeah. Sorry we couldn't set up the remote monitoring today. No worries, Carl. There are only 24 hours in a day, right? Anyway, I recorded a conversation between Laura and a guy named Brian around 7 p.m. Brian talked about screwing Laura's brains out again soon. I wanted to cry, but held back. My body felt numb, and my chest hurt. Laura was having an affair, and I couldn't understand why. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Anyway, Carl, I continued, this changes our focus. I'm calling Pete tomorrow to start the divorce process. We need to gather all the evidence we can. Pete was Peter Robinson, our company lawyer and my personal attorney. Yeah, Mark, I'm sorry, Carl said slowly. I don't have the words to tell you how sorry I am. Thanks, Carl, I replied, feeling a bit stronger. But it's on Laura. My daughter and I are the sufferers here, and I don't understand why she did this. I refocused. Okay, we're working in a different direction now. I'll see you at the office tomorrow morning, okay? Sure, Mark, he agreed. Hey, take it easy tonight, okay? Don't do anything you'll regret, he added earnestly. He was warning me not to damage Laura. I'm okay, Carl, I said. I listened to the intercept 3 hours ago, and I'm past it. I paused. But I won't be sleeping with her tonight, or ever again. I'll have to make up some excuse, but I can't sleep with someone who betrayed me, or... I know it complicates the investigation, but I just can't. That's fine, Carl said soothingly. It might take longer, but people who cheat think they're smarter than everyone else. They believe they can hide their affair, but they're predictable and easy to track. I stayed silent. Hang in there, boss, Carl continued. You'll come out of this stronger, no matter what. Yeah, I will, I replied, though I didn't believe it. All I saw ahead was suffering and humiliation for me and my daughter. I hadn't even begun to think about the heartache it would cause her. Okay, Mark, call me if you need anything, even if it's just to talk. I told him I would. I turned off my phone and activated the intercept equipment again to catch any more communications between Laura and her lover. I slept in the guest bedroom, telling Laura I had a dry throat and congestion that might make me snore. She agreed quickly, uninterested. I also mentioned it would be closer to Alyssa if she needed us, but Laura just shrugged and returned to her magazine. Alyssa's recent bedwetting, an emotional issue, didn't concern her. The next afternoon, Carl gave me a preliminary report. Laura's lover was Brian Collier, an accounting executive in her office. He was one of 3 division supervisors, like Laura. He was married with a 1-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. His wife, Pamela, was a part-time insurance agent. Brian was 38, taller but slighter than me. I had been an amateur boxer in my teens and still lifted weights a couple of times a week. Mr. Collier, as seen in the one photo Carl found, seemed more like a runner than an athlete. He might be considered good-looking to some, but not exceptionally so. I wondered what drew Laura to break our vows for him. Carl bribed a phone company contact to get a year's history of Laura's phone records. A quick analysis showed a few initial calls between them, increasing to weekly about 8 months ago, and now daily, usually at night or early morning. Carl noted they often talked after I left for work and when I was in the basement lifting weights. Do you know what happened around the time the calls spiked?
Carl asked.
His businesslike manner made it slightly easier to handle. I leaned back, thinking. She went to a training seminar in Chicago a couple of weeks before the calls increased. I remember taking her to the airport, and Brian was there getting on the same plane. That seminar might be the start of this, Carl said. Too many things point to it. I don't believe in coincidences either, I agreed. Carl checked his notepad. That's it for now. We've got digital copies of all credit card activity for the past year, thanks to your joint accounts. We'll also check your bank records today and let you know what we find. I was impressed by the volume of information they had gathered in just 2 days. How did you get all that without my authorization? I asked, wondering if I should confront the banks and phone companies about releasing private information so easily. Carl grinned. You authorized all of it, he said. I raised my eyebrows questioningly. He chuckled. Boss, you don't know what you're signing when Maggie gives you a stack of paperwork. Huh. I had to smile and nod. I used to trust Maggie almost as much as my wife. Now Maggie had the top spot. Okay, I said, raising my hands in surrender. Go forth and do battle with the bad guys and girls, I told him. By Thursday, Carl and his team had gathered a massive amount of information about my wife and her new partner. 2 investigators sent to Chicago found several people who remembered Laura and Brian being very close at the seminar. A desk clerk thought they were married until he noticed their different surnames. Several hotel staff recalled them as frequent lounge visitors, stumbling to their rooms early in the morning after heavy drinking. The lounge manager had to ask them twice to tone down their risque behavior. Carl's investigators were negotiating with the hotel to see if security camera tapes were still available and could be obtained for a fee, likely involving an under-the-table payment. I nodded, understanding his implication. A freelance operative started working at Laura's office earlier than expected and reported that Brian and Laura were an item. Their mutual boss knew about the affair and had warned them to keep it out of the workplace. Laura had already lost a raise due to poor performance related to her conduct. I noted this for my attorney, as it indicated the company didn't enforce its morals clauses strictly. The freelancer working in payroll had already obtained copies of Laura and Mr. Collier's pay records along with their time and attendance information. It seemed they were taking off 1 or 2 afternoons a week for their rendezvous. Credit card data showed Brian Collier was a cheapskate since Laura paid for most of the motel rooms on the outskirts of town, indicating how cheap and tasteless their affair was. Laura's group of friends, who she claimed to meet at night, were mostly single or recently divorced women looking for men. Although Laura swore them to secrecy, all but one, Kathy, were quick to provide details to the investigators for a bribe. They gave dates, places, and times of Laura and Brian's meetings. Most of these women hadn't seen Laura in 2 months. Kathy, however, called Laura immediately after being questioned, claiming she hadn't revealed anything. Kathy was furious, thinking it unreasonable and spiteful for me to check on Laura.
She suspected it was me.
Kathy had a history of involvement in such matters, having been divorced twice for infidelity. She had a reputation for seducing married men and had been named in divorce cases. Despite not working in the same building as the others, she had somehow joined Laura's group and seemed to be encouraging the affair. Carl had cloned Laura's cell phone, ensuring the $100 bribes kept the other women quiet. They reassured Laura that they hadn't divulged anything. Laura only knew someone was asking questions, but she believed her friends were protecting her secret. I was amazed by the amount and quality of information Carl's team had gathered so quickly. Brian and Laura were amateurs, while Carl was a professional. They didn't stand a chance. The rest of that week and the next 2 were quiet at home. Laura canceled all but her Friday night outings, and Carl's agents confirmed the ladies went to clubs, danced with anyone who asked, and then went home. Brian stayed home with his family. One report suggested his wife wasn't happy about his sudden change of habit. I was surprised how short the effect of the investigators questioning the group was. It seemed Laura and Brian were arrogant, thinking they could continue as before. Weeks after the investigators contacted the Friday night group, the cell phone intercepts became more frequent and explicit. Laura and Brian thought everything had blown over and that I was oblivious. During this time, I almost moved completely into the spare bedroom. I could barely stand to kiss Laura on the cheek and refused to have sex with her despite her hints. I read Alyssa every book in her library and bought more to read with her. I developed a harsh-sounding dry cough, giving an excuse to sleep away from Laura, who didn't question it. Carl's team noted the late-night cell phone conversations between Laura and Brian had increased. On the third Wednesday, they arranged to meet at their usual cheap motel. Carl's team was ready to catch them, and my attorney Pete had prepared me. I arranged for Mandy, a 19-year-old neighbor, to babysit Alyssa that night. "Laura," I said, "please don't go out tonight." I stood in the living room as she was about to leave. "Please, Laura," I pleaded sincerely. I didn't want her to cheat on me. "Mark," she snapped, then softened. "Look, nothing is going on, Mark. I'm just going out for drinks and maybe some dancing. That's all," she said with a convincing look. She hugged me, trying to persuade me. "Laura," I said impulsively, "I know you're meeting someone tonight. You can't mean as much to him as you do to Alyssa and me. Please don't go." She pulled back, suspicious. "What are you talking about?" she asked indignantly. She was a good actress. "I just know," I insisted. "You're cheating on me and Alyssa, and it's not fair." She relaxed a bit, thinking I only had suspicions. "I'm not cheating on you," she said firmly. "I'm tired of these accusations. You keep this up, and I might just find someone to take care of my needs." I looked away to hide my sudden rage. "Laura," I said, struggling to speak through my anger. "Not another word," she said forcefully. "I have never, am not now, and never will cheat on you. Does that satisfy you?" She angrily walked to the door, putting on a light jacket. I noticed she wasn't wearing a bra and saw no panty lines under her miniskirt. "Laura," I said more calmly, "if you ever cheat on me, that ends a marriage. Remember what we talked about when Georgia and Sam broke up last year?" Her hand paused on the doorknob for a moment. "I told you," she said, her voice controlled but condescending. "I swear I don't want any man but you, and I never will," she said. "Now I'm late and have to go," she added firmly, without looking back. She opened the door and left. 20 minutes later, I joined Carl and 3 of his best operatives in the room next to where Brian and Laura would soon be. Spooked by my protests and the questioning of Laura's friends, Brian and Laura were driving around randomly, trying to see if they were being followed. The GPS devices confirmed no one was tailing them. Carl knew of the motel reservation almost immediately because the desk clerk had been paid to inform us. Since we knew their destination, there was no need to track them. If necessary, Carl would have used several cars to follow them without being noticed, aided by the GPS devices in their cars. Shortly after I arrived, Laura and Brian pulled up to the motel almost simultaneously and parked in front of room 19. They didn't notice the dark van across the street, recording their every move. They embraced and kissed passionately, oblivious to the camera. Carl watched me closely, knowing I wanted to storm out and confront them. "Mark," he said quietly, "it's going to get worse. Can you handle this?" I sat down on one of the beds, my lips suddenly dry. "Do you have anything to drink?" I asked. He misunderstood and shook his head. "Take this Valium," he said, offering a small yellow tablet. "It'll help calm your nerves." I accepted it and got a soft drink from the cooler he had brought. Carl had hidden a high-end digital camera in the room's air conditioning vent. It had full color, a wide range of motion, and a 10x zoom for detailed footage. Not that Carl expected such detail to be necessary. Once the duo went inside, things escalated quickly. Laura, as suspected, wore no underwear and was out of her dress in seconds. Brian followed suit, and they fell on the bed. We turned off our room's lights, and 2 of Carl's men positioned 2 fiber optic cameras, one under the door and one over the top. These tiny cameras, less than a quarter-inch in diameter, slipped easily through the door gaps. They taped the transmitters to the outside wall, and in the darkness, the devices were nearly undetectable. To ensure this, they unscrewed the nearby outside light before returning inside. The receivers were already connected to the monitor and recording equipment, so we settled in to watch. With 3 cameras in place, we were confident we wouldn't miss anything. The show was underwhelming. No foreplay, tenderness, or affection. Brian simply put on a condom and proceeded with the act. Watching Laura's face, I couldn't tell if she was in pain or ecstasy. "Damn," I said after a minute. "That guy isn't any bigger than me. Actually, he's smaller." Laura had measured me multiple times when we first married and knew I was on the high end of average. She used to call out for my big tool when we made love. But Brian was clearly on the low end of average, and he had to work hard to give Laura any stimulation. His technique was crude. What was Laura seeing in this guy? My pride was slightly redeemed. Later, when Sure, one of Carl's agents, glanced at my lap and then at the TV monitors, shaking her head with a smile, I detected a bit of speculation in her eyes before we both looked away. She worked for me, and I wasn't about to mix business with pleasure, but she was cute. Maybe in the future, who knows? There might be an opening for a new bedmate soon. After I left, there was nothing more to see. Brian and Laura would continue their affair, rest, and start again. What did Laura see in this guy, and why was she throwing away years of marriage for him? The two didn't meet for a week, frustrating them both. Their schedules weren't aligning. Then Kathy suggested to Laura that they go to Las Vegas for the weekend. The investigators had a lot of information on Kathy, revealing her as a spiteful woman estranged from her family due to past infidelities. In a monitored call, Kathy expanded on her suggestion. Tell Laura she won 2 free tickets to Vegas and invited her along. It was clear Kathy intended for them to go to Vegas to hook up with men, mentioning she bought 24 condoms. Laura agreed but invited Brian, disrupting Kathy's plans. Kathy was unhappy, but didn't protest when she heard Brian would join. Brian had to pay his own way, which he complained about, showing how cheap he was, expecting Laura to cover his trip. Pete, my lawyer, planned to subpoena Kathy. She knew both Laura and Brian were married and facilitated the affair by arranging the Vegas trip. Pete doubted he could get any money from her or that the lawsuit would go far. But he intended to scare her enough that she would never consider wrecking another marriage again. We debated whether to confront Laura now with the motel footage or wait until the Vegas trip. I wanted to end the deceit immediately and start divorce proceedings. However, Pete suggested giving them more rope to hang themselves. The out-of-state trip, with its lies and deceit, would be more damning, especially if Laura showed blatant disrespect for our marriage vows. Pete's goal was to catch her clearly over the line, which he did. The investigators stayed at the same casino hotel as Kathy, Brian, and Laura. Carl and his team were in a room with a direct line of sight into the trio's room. A $500 bribe got Laura a room on that side of the building. Carl's cameras were ready to capture any activity. People in high-rises often feel invisible due to the height and distance, which Carl had seen in many cases. Even if they closed the shades, Carl's team had a laser device to capture sound vibrations from the window, ensuring they could record voices clearly enough for court. They also planned to tape a phone conversation I was to call Laura and make one last plea for her to come back. Though it was a script from my lawyer, I hoped it might work. I felt intense emotions, switching between hot flushes and chills. I was physically sick, having eaten nothing all day. Carl's team left me at home, but I had a great view through the cameras they'd set up. A detective had watched them nearly wear out a stewardess by constantly ordering little bottles of booze on the plane. They were already very drunk. Laura, I said into the cell phone. On the webcam, I saw Laura on her knees and elbows on the bed being screwed by Brian from behind. She contorted to reach the phone on the nightstand, with Kathy enjoying the scene. Please, honey, don't have sex with that man, I pleaded. I almost slipped and said his name. I had to pretend I didn't know it. Come home to me, babe. Please. We can work something out. I tried to sound coaxing, as my lawyer had advised, to show Laura's complete unfaithfulness. Laura, think of Alyssa. Think of what ruining our marriage will do to her. It's amazing how long a man holds out hope, even when witnessing something beautiful being shattered. I loved Laura and hoped for a sign, but there was none. I might still love her, but I didn't like her at that moment. She affirmed my dislike immediately. Screw you. Laura screamed into the phone. I've told you before, you stupid crap. I am not having sex with anyone. I've had it with your damn suspicions. I shook my head at the duplicity. How could she say that while unclothed beside the man screwing her? When I hung up, I was amazed at her lies. She moved closer to her friends, watching them go down on each other. But I'll tell you this, sweetheart, she said finally. I just might pick up some creep tonight and bring him to my room. How's that, honey? Would you like that? I'll do it just so you can be right for once. How would that be, dear? I was astounded by her vindictiveness. This was the same woman who wanted to be held all night a year ago after her favorite aunt passed away. I knew Laura as a soft presence in bed, someone to turn to with any problem, and a lover when our baby was asleep. Laura, I said unsteadily. I don't know what else to say. I don't know why you're doing this. Think of what you're doing to Alyssa, for God's sake. Laura cut me off with another shrill scream. Go to hell and take her with you, she shouted, nearly incoherent. I only understood her because I could see her lips on the monitor. When I get home, we're going to have this out. You'll be lucky if I don't leave your sorry ass. Got that? She screamed more incomprehensible things, then stabbed at the off button and threw the phone, which landed between the bed and the